This is Ray Hoffman. Today, having a brand, a clear, well-defined brand identity is more important than ever. And the firm that keeps score on brands more than any other in the world is Interbrand. It's the world's largest brand consultancy. It has a new CEO as of this year, Charles Trevail.
Ray, thanks for inviting me in.
Yeah, welcome to CEO Radio.
First
and
time.
Welcome to the WCBS Conversation, and welcome to the Radio.com Theater.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Do you remember the very first brand that made an impression on you? I know when I was little, I was crazy about everything Pillsbury, whether it was frozen rolls or cinnamon buns or whatever it was. If Pillsbury made it, even cake mixes, and I didn't know how to bake a cake, but whatever it was, I was crazy about the Pillsbury brand. What about you?
That's a great question. You know, I've had a friend staying for the weekend who's had a 14-year-old son staying with us, and he has a little toy car that looks almost the same as the little toy cars I played with when I was a kid. So there were two brands. There were Dinky cars and there were Corgi cars. And now I grew up in the UK, so I don't know if you had the same brands here, but they were the brands that I guess I noticed first.
Yeah, Corgi was over here. Dinky, I don't think ever was.
Okay, yeah. Well, I preferred the Dinkies. I guess they were British cars at the time. You know how cars used to be different?
I have a Corgi, I think somewhere in a drawer somewhere, a Corgi Jaguar XJE.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, I think so. There's a quote on the Interbrand website that says, reinventing, I'm going to quote this, reinventing brands and businesses by collaborating with customers and stakeholders is Trevail's prevailing passion.
Yeah.
When did it become apparent to you that it was a prevailing passion?
Yeah, well, I worked in the brand consulting world from, you know, I guess the early 90s. And so I worked on all sorts of brand refreshes during that period. And it was in the mid-90s that I started working with a psychologist who became my business partner when I started the firm in 2003, where we started to bring consumers together in this pursuit of what the right brand was, or what the best brand strategy was. And I realized that when you bring the people that you're trying to serve into the consulting process, we got better answers. Okay, and we first did that work for British Airways. So it was the consultants, the clients, the frontline staff, and the consumers all working together to figure out what the best answer for the consumer was. And that's when, you know, I got this passion for the fact that you could build brands but do it with the people you're trying to serve rather than just test things out with them. So they were heavily involved in that process.
I saw that triangle on your website, and British Airways was an important campaign for you.
It was, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, you know, that was a pivotal program in my career. They approached us and said the front of the cabins are, it was in the mid-90s, the front of the cabins are, we have a problem there. We're losing share, and we think we need to upgrade the experience. And I think what they expected us to come back with was a slightly better cabin as we knew it then. There was a thing called the cradle seat, and if you remember that. We worked with their consumers, the people who used to fly towards the front of the aircraft, and they said, we basically want flat beds. Okay, we know that you've got, British Airways always had that first-class cabin with a couple of beds in it. They said, we know you can do that. And actually, so we brought the idea to British Airways with their customers that they could provide the very first flatbeds in business class in the air. And of course, that was a breakthrough. That really, they were the first to do that. It took them through, you know, 2001 and that difficult period, and they started winning significant share in their business class. And you get on a British Airways flight now, transatlantic, and, you know, 2/3 of the plane is those beds. So that was a real breakthrough, and I guess that was probably the most significant. We only ever get to do, I don't know, half a dozen pieces of iconic work in our lives, and that was definitely one for me.
And you made somewhat of a luxury product out of it.
We did, yeah, we did. We managed to improve the yields on the aircraft. We managed to gain premium pricing, and you know, the people in the Virgin aircraft leaving on the other runways, and American Airlines and others all struggled during that period because everyone wanted to be on those British Airways aircraft. I guess it was what we would call now a temporary monopoly. You know, we created something that takes a little while for the competition to catch up with.
Yeah, you did a number of reinventions at the Boston-based consultant C-Space, where
Yeah.
you're still CEO.
That's correct.
Even as you're now CEO of Interbrand. Walmart, McDonald's, Samsung clients up there. You had an A list. Any
right.
favorite projects there?
Well, McDonald's is another one. I've had a long history with McDonald's, and you know, again, you know, where McDonald's had an up and down history in the last decade, but the work we did with McDonald's was to, we've done a lot of work with them, but the thing I'm probably proudest of is creating the restaurant of the future. And it was with Steve Easterbrook. And
you were the one.
Well, it was in the UK. I guess Steve probably wished he'd had that rolled out rather faster, given the speed of change and how much he's changing now. But again, that was a really great program, and it was, you know, we didn't know what the answer was. Him and his team didn't know what the answer was. They didn't know at the time whether it was open the restaurants up and make them more transparent, or whether to close them down and to make it more, you know, more like a factory process. Didn't know whether people wanted better service one-to-one, or whether they wanted no interaction at all and to be able to order by text. Of course, the answer was a combination of those things, but what people really wanted at McDonald's was a destination, and that's what we built.
And in doing that, did you have like a blank room that you kept moving things about?
Here's the thing we did. Again, back to that process, we built the restaurant of the future with their customers, with their staff, with their management. And we didn't actually build the thing. We weren't involved in building the restaurant, but we conceptualized the restaurant, and then McDonald's built it.
So you didn't do as Marriott does, for example, and do blank hotel rooms where you move things around?
Yeah, they did. But McDonald's did.
But
yes.
you didn't?
Yeah, we did not physically build that ourselves. No, that's correct.
Now, conversely, is there a branding effort that you thought was absolutely terrific and absolutely failed?
Well, I don't know. I can't think of one example now, but, you know, the thing that I do remember back in, you know, at the beginning of my career, I used to sit there and we used to do all these amazing branding programs. We could never figure out why they didn't work. Sometimes, you know, the company was not on board with them, and sometimes the consumer was not on board with them. And it was only when I started to work, you know, with experts and consumers together that we seemed to be getting our hit rate, you know, higher than, I don't know, we would say 50%. Because these are difficult things to do. You have to align what it is customers are looking for. You have to align what the company is capable of delivering. You have to look at what's, you know, different from the competition. And you have to build something that's going to last for, you know, 10 or 15 years. So it's quite difficult getting the alignment around when you make a, you know, a big bet for the future. So I can't think of one that I immediately thought was going to work, and it didn't, but I'm sure there have been some in the past.
At least if early iterations that didn't work, and then you move on to the next one.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Therein lies brand psychology.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, you know, nowadays we're looking at, you know, this year when we're launching this, the Best Global Brands, we're looking at an idea we're calling Activating Brave. Because you know how fast the world is changing. We see disruptive new competitors coming into the market all of the time. Many big companies around the world are looking for the next, you know, the next thing, the next temporary monopoly. And they're looking at having to rebrand themselves. And the question always is, do we evolve or do we take a big bet? And what we're seeing increasingly is that the companies that are taking the bigger bets, because the world is so noisy now, attention is difficult to get hold of. It's the companies that are taking the bigger bets that are tending to do better.
Yeah, I just finished a book that I'm sure you know about, Ogilvy on Advertising in the Digital Age, the new one by Miles Young. It's not the great literary book that Ogilvy wrote, but it's a great strategic book, and he makes the point that companies that have a definitive point of view in their branding are like twice as likely to outperform the companies that don't.
That's right. That's right. And we felt that for years, and we've just looked at the period, you know, we're 10 years on from Lehman and the crash, and we've just looked at the numbers and the growth. We're finding that strong businesses with strong brands are growing roughly at twice the pace, even in that period. When people say this is, you know, they haven't thought about it as the age of the brand. They've been talking about, you know, technology and disruption and globalization and all of those things. But even during this period, we're seeing the companies that have strong brands are outpacing those that don't.
And I'm sure the notion of branding is much stronger than it was when you started in the industry.
Well, it's more complex. It's much more complex because if you think about, you know, when I go back in, if we look at the ages of branding, and Interbrand have talked about the ages of branding, you know, the original age of branding was really about design and creating iconography, the Coca-Colas, and then we moved, you know, into the next period that was about, I guess, the age of premium, when we used to think about, you know, we all wanted a BMW, certainly I did when I was in my 20s, through to the age of experience, where we start to look at Starbucks and we think, you know, how did Starbucks persuade us to part with so much money for a cup of coffee? And now we're in this age we call the age of you. And that really is the age of personalization and the age of the consumer. And that age probably started around the turn of the century. We're still in the middle of that age, and I think companies are still struggling to think about how do we brand ourselves in the age of you. The Interbrand way of doing that now with C-Space is to do that with your consumer. That's where we think the answer lies.
But this is still largely a generational issue, right? The age of you?
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. No, I think what young people do nowadays defines what perhaps people more of our generation are looking at. What's cool to us? You know, when my father's generation, you know, when he retired, he wanted a Jaguar sitting in his drive. Now people have a Mini sitting in their drive. You know, so there's something changing. I think the younger generations are certainly driving the changes in society. But I think that this is, you know, the world has flattened out. We're looking at younger people now for inspiration
pushing that
today.
in a multi-generational way then.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that is changing.
Now you're the CEO of the world's largest brand consultancy, the new CEO as of January, I think, this year. This is the 5th company you've headed?
Yeah, I guess that's right.
Okay. If I'm going to follow you closely, I'm going to take a camera crew around, follow you closely, maybe ask all your intimates too, a la Bob Woodward, what it's like to work for you as you come into a new company and begin leading. What am I going to find out? What am I going to see?
Yeah, I think people will say I'm personable. I heard someone say that. They introduced me to a new member of staff. They said he's the most personable CEO you're going to meet. So I guess, you know, I like being with people. I want to build a stronger culture at Interbrand because I think businesses are really just a sum of the people. The thing I say about myself is that relationships are the source of results. So more than anything technical, Interbrand will bring you, it'll be the relationships that will deliver really great results for you.
Not that results are the result of relationships.
Well, yeah. I mean, the two things are so interconnected. So I'm a relationship person, but you'll also, people will be clear what our strategy is. I'm pretty clear about direction and where we're heading and the things we're going to do and the things we're not going to do, and I make sure that every person in the company is as clear of those things as they possibly can be. I started by listening. You know, a lot of CEOs go into roles now and spend the first 3 months listening. I did exactly the same. But now we're clear. We're clear what we're going to be and what we're going to do, and everyone in the company is clear as well.
Have most companies, let's say S&P 500 size companies, reached the point where they really understand the value of their own branding?
Have they?
Yeah. Have they reached that point yet?
Well, that's a very good question. That's a very good question. You know, I think I'll probably answer that by saying, because branding's become more complex, I think they've understood what I would call old branding, or 20th century branding, which was about consistency, and it was about, you know, saying the same thing. It was about, you know, kind of trying to build trust and awareness and all that. I think they understand that, but branding's changed now. Branding, you have to be absolutely clear what it is you stand for and what you stand against. So, I mean, even look at the world today, Nike, what they're standing for and what they're standing against. Not all companies can do that. If you ask Google what they stand for and what they stand against, they can't be quite as different. They can't take sides. They serve everybody. So understanding who you are, what you're for, and what you're against is a level of sophistication, psychology, if you like, around who am I as a business, What's my purpose? Who do I serve? What do I stand for? What do I stand against? That wasn't the case 20 or 30 years ago.
And I have to think that's hugely valuable within the culture of a given company.
Well, absolutely. The other thing that has changed, I would say the sorts of things companies have to do nowadays is they have to do what I call love their home team. They have to love, particularly if you're in a service organization, you can get on an airline and I guarantee you'll know which airline looks after its staff better than another because of the way the staff treat you. So the staff have to know what the brand stands for, what stands for, stand against, and they have to feel very confident that they've been given the autonomy to behave in the way that you, the customer, want to be treated. So that's to do with the way they're treated. So we know the good airlines and the not so good airlines. So part of your brand nowadays is how are you treating or loving your staff.
I love that phrase, yeah. The #1 global brand in the 2018 survey, no surprise, is Apple. It's been the #1 ever since 2013. It's increased its brand value by 156% over the last 6 years. $214 billion brand, so it's worth as much as Google and Microsoft combined. How has that happened, a $214 billion brand value?
It is an astonishing story, isn't it? I think the thing about Apple is that when we look through those ages of branding I described earlier, Apple have got it right in every age. You know, they've got the iconography right, they've got the premium right, they've got the sense of it being an experience right. I mean, when Steve Jobs, basically, I think he invested something like $8 billion in 2002 on retail. Just when everyone was saying retail is over, you know, he knew that he needed a direct relationship with his consumer.
And an experiential relationship.
Absolutely,
before
right.
we were talking experience.
Exactly right. And right the way through to this age of you that we've talked about, which is about personal. If you know, Google's pretty good at personalizing, you know, its experience for me. So it's got everything right. The other thing it's done, of course, is it's got the volume of a Toyota, but it's got the margins of a luxury brand. So I was speaking with another commentator the other day about this, and he was saying that Apple are an astonishing brand because they've got the volumes of a major player, but the margins of a top luxury business. I don't think we've ever seen that before.
And then right behind them, practically, what's #3 this year is Amazon. #5 last year.
Yeah.
2017 report, the brand value increase was 29%. This year, 56%. Now, that sounds like a snowball to me. And I'm wondering if I can extrapolate the notion that with that kind of growth, which is more than Apple's growth in terms of brand value, that it will eventually pass Apple to become the most valuable brand.
Yeah,
Amazon.
I think it will. I think it will. And who's going to bet on stopping Amazon at the moment? They only have to sniff at a new category, and the share price of all the, of all those competitors goes down, and theirs goes up. So, you know, Amazon is probably the most customer-centric company that the world has ever seen. It really is. And so it's built its brand around just looking at unmet customer needs, and Bezos says, we'll just do that.
And with the growth of artificial intelligence, it's only going to be more so.
That's right. That's right. I mean, at some point, somewhere in that business are the seeds of its destruction. Somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, one might question, where's the emotional connection with Amazon? You know, you might say, if you might roll forward 15 years and say, perhaps Amazon is going to look like the post office, you know, that we grew up with. It's going to look like a brand that just delivers utility. And we always know that historically someone can take their value proposition and do it faster, better, cheaper.
Yeah, ask Sam Walton.
Well, exactly, exactly. So I wonder, shouldn't Amazon be building a little more emotion into its brand?
Yeah. Now, I want to go back to the 2012 survey. Facebook debuted that year on the best global brands list at #69. Last year, it peaked at #8.
Yeah.
This year, #9. Its brand value is 6% below where it was a year ago. And I'm wondering, how closely do you follow stock prices, you personally?
No, not that. I don't, not that.
Okay.
But I know they had a massive, I can't remember what was, what
Yeah.
write-off was in a single day, but you know the number, I'm sure.
Two high-volume sell-offs. You're sitting with the right guy for me to explain this, okay? Now, indulge me here. When you look at the charts, Apple and Amazon and especially Microsoft are in absolute uptrends. Of course, Facebook is another story. In fact, the chart is pretty terrible looking. The shares are down 24% since July, and if I had to make a bet on it, I would say they're probably going to go another 10% lower before they find any support, and maybe a lot lower than that. So what I'm wondering is, that's the technical analyst in me, so I'm wondering about this is, if you see a company's brand value plateauing or eroding considerably, can we make any kind of serious correlation here between a company's brand value and its market value?
Yeah, you can. And you know, the brand value is a signal of where the business, you know, the longer term health of the business. We base the brand value on a 5-year EBIT projection. That's one of the things we base it on. But what we're seeing for Facebook is some serious issues around its brand, around trust, around privacy, around ethics, all of those issues that we're hearing about. And so one of the things we're saying nowadays is that businesses need to build their brands as though they were in glass houses. You know, we used to paint the outside. You know, the branding was almost the paint that covered the house, but in the world of the internet, you can see straight through. So I think, you know, one of the issues that Facebook are facing is, who's their customer? Are you and I the customer? Are they serving us? Well, we know deep down that we're the product.
Yeah, right.
We're the product. We are not the customer. And so I think Facebook is beginning to struggle to figure out, like, how do we own up to the fact that actually you and I are just the product?
Yeah.
And that we're being monetized.
Yeah. Now, if you were... go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and no one feels very comfortable with being monetized. And the value exchange between, you know, Facebook and its members is in rapid decline. Now, they have Instagram and they have WhatsApp and those aren't counted, by the way, in our valuations. We only look at the Facebook brand within the Facebook business.
Oh, so Instagram is now a separate brand?
It is, but it's not within the top 100, and it's not counted against the brand valuation for the Facebook brand.
You know, I think it's especially interesting that 3 companies have come back onto the top 100 list this year, as opposed to many years when you don't see that phenomenon. Chanel, private, family-held company, hadn't been on the list since 2009. Now it's back to 23. Hennessy, the cognac maker. Now this is a brand that obviously has some generational demographic problems. Cognac. It's back on the list, and Nintendo is back on the list. Now, the theme of this year's survey, as you mentioned, is activating Brave. Are these 3 companies, Nintendo, Hennessy, and Chanel, in rebuilding their brand identities, examples of activating Brave? Yeah,
I think they are, and the story behind the luxury brands is that many, I think that and subscription businesses were the fastest growing businesses within our rankings this year. You see that in the luxury sector generally, there's an amazing focus on quality, but increasingly a sense that luxury is for everyone. The luxury brands are starting to engage in a way that we've perhaps not seen them in the past. If you look at some of the things that a brand like Gucci's doing, it's pretty phenomenal that Gucci is reinventing itself. Gucci is, yes, a luxury brand, therefore it says something about me, but it's kind of also for everyone. It's accessible luxury now in a way. So I think these companies are looking at how they reinvent themselves, how they rebuild themselves, and they're led, you know, the people running these businesses really understand brands. They really do. I guess the story with Nintendo is, you know, the growth of gaming, and I think they have, you know, hit products that are taking off.
Yeah, slightly different story than Hennessy.
That's right. Yes, it is, yeah.
Now, is there a lower-ranked company on the list? Maybe number 64 or something, but number 64 with a bullet. I mean, the one that you see having top 10 potential in a fairly short time.
Well, I think there's 2, and they both have this subscription theme to them. Netflix is one of the fastest growers. I think it's 45% growth in the last 12 months. And Spotify. Spotify is a new entrant. Who would not bet on those two brands. You know, Netflix, I'm sure you're a user. I mean, everyone's a user. Who can't be? But you know, this subscription idea means that there's a value exchange. They're almost treating us like members of a club. And we pay our dues every month. And so it's important that the value proposition works for us as individuals and that they're constantly updating and improving because they want to keep us for life. And I think you'll find Spotify are doing exactly the same thing. I have all the music I ever need now on Spotify. And I keep discovering new music the more I look around. So it works fantastically for me. So I do think subscription is one of the very big ideas for the next decade. And I think we'll continue to see those subscription brands, people like Adobe as well, continuing to grow at a faster rate than the survey as a whole.
Yeah, Adobe gets $40 a month out of me for the various products I use.
Exactly.
And on your podcast, and I hit him on CEO Radio as well, Teen Zuo from Zuora, the subscription software company. I mean, he makes a very persuasive argument in that every company is going to have a subscription for something.
That's right. I know Teen well, and we're about to do something together. So we're going to put together a joint offer and be able to provide services for companies in the subscription economy.
Oh, fabulous. We'll all have to talk about that when it happens.
Good.
Now let's go back to the old Interbrand survey, 2012. Coca-Cola was still the most valuable brand in 2012. Apple would surpass it the next year. Coke is still ranked number 5 on the list, but the brand value is down 18% from these last 6 years.
Yeah.
Pretty significant slide.
Yeah. Were you surprised?
Not at all.
No. No, I mean, Coke, it's one of those businesses that we were talking about this earlier, that you know, the businesses that are doing really well have an idea that's bigger than the business. I would defy anyone to say that Coca-Cola today has an idea that's bigger than the business. I think the business expanded on that idea of Coca-Cola around the world and has done extremely well, but the headwinds that it's facing now, the health, you know, issues, that the sugar issues, that it's struggling. And I think Coke really needs to reinvent what it is. And perhaps selling it in the volumes that it sells today is not going to be its best strategy for the future.
And that same idea goes for IBM. I was looking over the list there. The brand value fell by 8% in 2014.
Yeah.
10% in 2015, 19% in 2016, 11% in 2017, and this year's list is down another 8%.
Yeah. So I don't know what the IBM brand stands for anymore. I don't know if you do, but I struggle to know.
It was mainframes.
It was mainframes, and then they transformed well over a number of periods from, you know, a services business, software business, now into the cloud, but we're now left with Watson. And I don't know if Watson is, you know, a big enough idea to carry Big Blue forward. So I do think, you know, I guess most, if we're fair to IBM, most of IBM's competitors, when we go back to the mainframe firms that they used to compete with, have disappeared.
Gone, yeah.
So they've done a great job of transforming the business over the years, but, you know, can they keep that up? It doesn't look like it from here, but, you know, I don't know IBM that well, but it feels like their brand has lost its way.
A general excellence, but not an innovation excellence.
That's right, yeah.
Now, you have a very good podcast. I referred to it earlier. Certainly one of the better business and leadership podcasts out there. It's called Outside In. I'm wondering if there's anything you've learned from doing it that you didn't expect to learn.
Well, there's lots of things I've learned. Every podcast I do, I learn something new. But the thing I've learned, if the question is about what I've learned about me, it may not be, but my father was a journalist. I'm dyslexic, so I found writing really difficult. And I was going to go into journalism, and then someone said, "How do you like writing?" I said, "I don't really like writing at all." But what I find on the podcast is I never write anything. I just ask the questions, and so it's the curiosity in me that comes out on the podcast. And I love meeting people, so each podcast I do is great fun, and I learn something new each time.
And as a New York resident who serves as global CEO of a global company based in London, with offices all over the place, what is your life like in 2018?
Well, a lot of aircraft time, but thank God for video conferencing is all I could say. You know, I think video conferencing is great once you've met someone. I think it's really difficult to do it well when you have no relationship. But, you know, once you've met someone once or twice, you can get on a video conference. It makes it really easy, and you can have some fun. And but yeah, too much time on aeroplanes away from the family. And but you know, that's just part of working life nowadays.
Yeah. And how many offices does Interbrand have?
Oh gosh, about 20 offices, and Seaspace has about 7 offices, so we're scattered all over the world.
And so you're expected to be there.
Yeah, well, you have to be. You can't run a business. Running a people business, you have to be there. You have to go and fly the flag.
Well, continued success, Charles Trevail.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ray. Thanks
Most
for having me on.
appreciated.
Thank you.